Hello everyone, I'm Auntie Kara, but this video is not for kids. This is another video for grown-ups who love fairy tales. Today I am going to be talking to you about Isabel Allende's House of the Spirits, a very, very, very magical book. But first I wanted to say a very special thank you to everyone who's watching. My channel's been getting a lot more likes and views and everything lately, and that's because of all of you. So if you like and you come back to watch, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything. And don't forget to keep tuning back. I really love talking about books, and I love that there's people who love listening to me talk about books. All right, so The House of the Spirits. This is a very, very interesting book, both in its subject matter and in the way that it's written. I've never quite read a book like this before, in the way that it's realism, but it's realism in a world where magic is real and spirits are real, and what is natural and what is supernatural is much more of a blurred line than what you would find in most realism, and I really found that fascinating. The other thing I find interesting in this book is that it is essentially the story of 3 generations of women from the same family. And they are quite a well-to-do family, although the book doesn't explicitly say so. Most people agree that it takes place in Chile, and it kind of goes from about the 50s, maybe all the way up into the 70s and the reign of Pinochet and all the upheaval that happened in Chile there. And the book does talk about that and does talk about the way that political jarring transition came in between families. And it talks about the camps that they had for people who were rebelling, and there's all sorts of descriptions. It gets quite heavy at the end, with the camps and the descriptions of the physical and emotional and mental torture that was happening. So it's not a light and fairy book, although I do feel it fits in the category of, people, grown-up books who have an essence of fairy tales. So it's not light and fluffy. It is a heavy-duty read, but it is very powerful, and it is a very interesting experience reading this book to see how both the family and the community and the culture change over time, and seeing how the different characters change as they move through the different stages of their life and they fulfill different roles in the family. One of the things I really, really love about this, as I've said, is that it's considered magic realism. So the women in the family are very sensitive. There's lots of communing with spirits and having visions and fortune teller type stuff, as well as even like alien stuff kind of intermingled. And what I really like is in this world, it's just kind of accepted as truth. Like, it's not like realism that then has to transition into fantasy. It's just realism, but in a world imagined with magic and a culture where magic is accepted. And I found that really interesting in the way that it all kind of weaves throughout the story, but it's not the primary factor. Like, it's never that, like, the magic is the center of the story. It definitely propels the story forward at times, but it really provides more insight into the quality of the different characters' personalities, and some clarity as to like why they make the decisions they do and what drives them and what is in their heart. So I've got 2 sections I'm going to read to you today, and they both kind of just give you a taste. I will say the first time I read this book, I found it a little hard to get into just because I was so unused to the magic realism type genre and type writing. I kept trying to find the reason why there was magic in these realistic events and like try to make sense of that. So my advice if you're reading this book is to just trust that it is a very good book. And if you get a little bit of resistance to it initially, to just kind of push through that and take a break if you need, but always go back to it, because I'm really, really thankful I came back to this book and I read all the way through. It ended up touching my heart in a lot of ways, and I hope it does for you as well. All right. The city is a shithole, he concluded. The carriage trotted around the house, toward the house where he had grown up. He shuddered at how badly the neighborhood had declined over the years, ever since the rich had decided to move their houses farther up the hill from everybody else, and the city had expanded into the foothills of the Cordillera. There was not a trace of the square where he had played as a little boy. It was now an empty lot, filled with carts from the market that were parked among piles of garbage where stray dogs rummaged. His house was a ruin. He saw all the signs of the passage of time. On the rickety, old-fashioned stained glass door, with its motifs of exotic birds, there was a bronze knocker in the shape of a woman's hand pressing on a ball. Pardon me. He knocked and waited what seemed like an interminable while the door was open with a tug on a string that ran from the doorknob to the top of the stairs. His mother lived on the second floor and rented out the first floor to a button factory. Esteban began to climb the creaky steps, which had not been waxed in a long time. An ancient servant, whose existence he had completely forgotten, stood waiting for him on the landing and embraced him tearfully, just as she had greeted him at 15 when he came home from working at the notary office where he earned his living copying property transfers and powers of attorney. Nothing had changed, not even the placement of the furniture, but everything struck him as different. The hallways with their worn wood floors, the broken window panes, patched with scrapes of cardboard, the dusty ferns languishing in rusty tin cans and chipped ceramic pots, the fetid smells of urine mixed with food that turned his stomach. What poverty, Esteban thought. He wondered what on earth his sister did with all the money he sent her so that she could live in dignity. Frula came out to meet him with a sad grimace of welcome. She was greatly changed. She was no longer the opulent woman he had left years ago. She had lost weight, and her nose seemed enormous on her angular face. She gave off an aura of melancholy and bewilderment, a scent of lavender and old clothes, and they embraced in silence. "How's Mamma?" Esteban asked. "Come see. She's been waiting for you," Frula replied. And that was the first one. Let's go on to the next. Clara saw to everything. Within 2 weeks the cages were filled with new birds, and she had ordered a porcelain bridge that could be attached to her remaining molars. But the thing turned out to be so uncomfortable that she preferred wearing her denture on a ribbon around her neck. She put it in only to eat, and on occasion for social gatherings. Clara brought life back to the house. She ordered the cook to keep a stove always lit, and told her she should be prepared to feed a large number of guests at a moment's notice. She knew why she said it. Within a few days her spiritualist friends, the Rosicrucians, the Theosophists, the acupuncturists, the telepaths, the rainmakers, the peripatetics, the Seventh-day Adventists, and the hungry who otherwise needy artists began to appear. All those who had habitually been part of Clara's court. Clara reigned over them like a small, happy, toothless queen. It was then that she began her first serious attempts to communicate with extraterrestrial beings, and that, as she herself noted, she began to have her first doubts regarding the spiritual messages she received from the pendulum and the three-legged table. She often said that perhaps it was not the souls of the dead wandering in another dimension, but rather beings from other planets who were trying to establish a relationship with Earthlings, but who, because they were made of an intangible matter, could easily be confused with souls. That scientific explanation enchanted Nicholas, but it did not enjoy the same reception with the Mora sisters, who were extremely conservative. All right. So that's your first taste of the House of the Spirits. I hope you enjoyed my reading, and I hope you pick up this book from your local library or from your local bookstore. Don't miss it. It is a wonderful book, and it will touch your heart, I promise. If you do read it, don't forget to comment below so I can see what you think, and I'll see you guys next time. Ta-ta!